Hey Bat fans, Luke here, back with another video, and today we're going to take a look at another one of those Bat trades that not too many people talk about, and that is Batman Collected Legends of the Dark Knight. This trade deals with stories from the Legends of the Dark Knight series, and this trade in particular has three of those stories. The first one is a 3-issue story entitled Blades, which deals with Batman and his character called the Cavalier. The next story is called The Legend of the Dark Might, which is a one-shot story that deals with this character called Overdog and his interaction with Batman and Batmite. And lastly, a 2-issue story called Hothouse, which deals with Batman and Poison Ivy predominantly. And I will say this trade up front, it was a really good read, but with this trade, I do think you get a wide range of quality within. And what I say that is that you have a story that is really good, you have a story that is good, then you have a story that is not so good. But I like to go ahead and start off the bat with the story that was really good, and that is Blades, which was written by James Robinson with art by Tim Sale. And James Robinson, who's currently writing the Wonder Woman series, and Tim Sale, you know him from the classic, Long Halloween and Dark Victory, and you even see him right now currently working on the variant covers for Batman in the Rebirth era. And this story is really good, and I talked through it. I do want to leave some meat on the bone with this story because this is one I highly recommend you reading, but I will kind of give my two thoughts on it. And the general synopsis is that Batman is trying to solve this murder crime that's going on, being done by this character called Mr. Lime. And Mr. Lime, what he's doing, and he's going around killing all the old people who are older than the age of 63, I believe. And the reason why he's doing this is that he feels that the world is overpopulated, so the way to get rid of the population, or at least dwindle it down a little bit, is to take out all these old people. And Batman really is obsessed with this case, and really is bogged down and kind of not paying attention to some of the other crimes that are going on within Gotham, with some of the simpler stuff, like the muggings and the thefts. But as he's going after this case, there's this character called the Cavalier, who really is an actor, but what he really wants to do is make his name, as a vigilante. And what he's doing is going after all these cases that Batman really doesn't have the time to do right now, and really make a mark for himself. And what ultimately happens with him is that as he's doing his patrols at night, he comes across this character. I think her name is Ellen, and Ellen is attempting to commit suicide by jumping off a bridge. And as he saves her, he actually sees her as like love at first sight. And we find out the reason why she's trying to commit suicide is that she killed her husband. And the reason why she killed her husband, the book doesn't say particular that it was self-defense, but it's definitely implied that her husband beat her, and in an attempt one night to really save her own life, she ended up murdering her husband. But in doing so, there was that's her right there, as you see the scene as she's jumping off the bridge. As she murdered her husband, there was someone inside, actually staying at the guest house, kind of a crime lord type of person, who was a friend of her husband, who originally agreed to, actually at his initiative, kind of cover up for her, get rid of the evidence, remove the murder weapon. But in doing so, it came with a cost. in that he would continue to bribe or blackmail this lady Ellen, if I remember her name correctly, in order to get money and extort her. But as the Cavalier grows more and more in love with this character, he takes a turn for the worse in that he kind of sells his soul to the devil and actually agrees to turncoat for being a vigilante into doing some off-job thefts for this individual who's blackmailing or extorting his newfound love. And in return, eventually, this person would give up the murder weapon so Evan or Ellen, whatever, won't have to worry about being extorted anymore. But all is not as it seems, in that as the Cavalier, who's actually, again, makes this turn from going good to bad, and when he's doing all these thefts, the police find out and the people start to turn on him. But that's not the reason why it goes bad for him, in that we find out that this person right here who's extorting Ellen will say that, hey, okay, yeah, deal's a deal, here's the murder weapon, but I still want to milk money and off of Ellen, and I might just change my story to the police, and there's really nothing that she can do about it. And in doing so, the Cavalier makes even the more fatal decision and he realizes what's going to happen with Ellen, and that she's really never going to be free as long as he's alive. Ends up murdering that individual. And you do see, as the case between Batman and Mr. Lime kind of resolved itself, you do see a confrontation ultimately between Batman and the Cavalier, in that while the Cavalier is doing all these bad things, they are for some good intentions, but he does kind of weigh down his conscience, in that he really can't go on with Batman knowing what he did, and really there's kind of like the slippery slope. He does this now, and it really can never end. So he's basically come to the decision it's going to be either Batman or him. And you do see an epic climax at the end where the two do battle. And you do see at the very end this fight between Batman and the Cavalier is really well done. And you do see a conclusion to it that it does kind of tug at your heartstrings a little bit, in that the story, even though it was only 3 issues, really did do a really good job of really fleshing out this Cavalier character. And believe it or not, he was actually more the forefront of this story more than Batman. But they do come to a head, and the ending, again, it is kind of cumbersome, in that he does kind of make a final sacrifice for Ellen, in that she is finally free. But again, Cavalier's kind of made the decisions that there's really he made a point of no return, and you do see kind of like the tragic fall, much like we saw in the scene where the Cavalier takes out the person who was bribing Evelyn. It's just he I'm not going to say beyond saving, but he did kind of cross the line that there was really no going back from. And you do see the tragic fall of this Cavalier character. Again, not going to go too much more into that. We'll kind of brush up as we kind of wrap up the video, kind of some of the details of the story. But that's generally the gist of this story. The next story is the one I was most disappointed with, and that is Legends of the Dark Might. And part of the reason I was really disappointed with it was actually written by Alan Grant. And it's just, this story was just so tired. It was, the basic premise of this story was that there's this character named the Overdog. And what the Overdog is, he's a thief, but he's a drug addict. And him and his crew went out to do his crime job one night. And basically what happened is that Overdog went tripping balls, and whole bunch of chaos ensued, and that you do see bat mites show up. And what was not specifically told, but it's implied, is that all the other people who were involved in this job actually were murdered, and actually Overdog was arrested for it. But Overdog, being he was so high, what I interpreted it to be, actually thinks he saw a Batmite actually kill all these people who were doing this job with him. And it's him kind of recounting the interaction between him and Batmite to Batman, who Batman's actually, this is the conversation with him and Batman occurs while he's in the asylum, because he's actually found guilty but insane, because of the story he came up with. Hey, I got this little elf running around in the Batman costume who actually killed all these people. But he just recounts that, and it's just tired. I was just really disappointed with what Alan Grant did in this story. And that's basically it. He basically gets stuck in jail. He says he'd rather go to jail rather than be in the asylum, because Batmite will keep coming to him. Batman's kind of like, hey, it is what it is, buddy. And it kind of wraps up. Again, there was really, I was just really so bored with this story, to be honest. I was really disappointed. Not only because I like Batmite, especially what Grant Morrison did with the character, but again, it's Alan Grant, which I know he doesn't always hit home runs, but I was really kind of disappointed in his effort in this one. And the last story, it's called Hothouse. Oops, this camera, I swear I hate it. Slides all the time. What Hothouse is a story that opens up with this individual here. I think his name is Mr. Spencer, I think. And he's much like in the first story, kind of deals with this person who's trying to commit suicide, and more cavalier, ultimately save the person. In the first issue, Batman attempts to save this person in this story. And what's going on as he's trying to commit suicide, Batman deducts that he's acting like he's drugged. And he's referencing, she ruined me. And so you really can't find out what happened. But he does fall. Batman does attempt to save him, but ultimately is unsuccessful. He falls and he breaks his neck. And Batman believes that, obviously, the guy was high, but it was the breaking of the neck. While he might have survived the fall initially, he wasn't going to make it. Jesus, camera. But what we find out as the coroner does the autopsies, that he deducts that not only was that drug in his system, he broke his neck. He wasn't going to live anyway, because his body internally was infected with this mold that basically was going to kill him. So he was going to die either way. And what kind of puts Batman kind of in a conundrum in this is that as the attempted suicide occurred, he noticed Pamela Isley in the crowd. So automatically he hears, mold in the blood system. You got Poison Ivy sitting there watching this attempted suicide go on. He thinks obviously she has everything to do with why the guy was committing suicide. But we find out initially, not is all what it seems with Poison Ivy. This is the Poison Ivy who just recently completed her rehabilitation, and in doing so, kind of lost all of her powers to make the men of the world bend to her will just by a touch. Those all went away. But we do find there is a connection between her and this character Spencer, and initially, and that Spencer was kind of one of these key people in his university that Isley was working with. And they did have a love affair between each other, but what ultimately was happening is that Ivy was creating this drug, and I forget what she called it. Obviously had to deal with something with obviously with plants. This is driving me nuts. I can't remember. Sometimes I do these videos, I can't remember the details. But either way, it's a psychiatric drug that she was able to develop. And what Spencer was doing, he was taking her concept and her design and selling it to these criminals who would then flush it out in the streets. But obviously, there was a plot twist in that the criminals obviously didn't want to share the wealth with Spencer, so they got obviously Ivy, who can manufacture a drug, get rid of the middleman, they can make more money. And so you see a plot twist that maybe they're responsible, and it's actually something that Batman tries to pin the criminals that were pushing the drugs on Spencer's death, and that you initially see that Batman actually believes Isley. And is like, you know what, okay, since... because initially he thought too that since Ivy lost her kind of her poison ivy characteristics due to rehabilitation, it was the drug itself that was causing the mole within his body that was going to kill him anyway. So they tried to actually get the criminals in court to be charged with murder due to them pushing the drugs that led to his death, but and ultimately it is not the case. But as this is going on, we do see, again, all is not what we've seen with Poison Ivy, in that we do see her rehabilitation might not have been as transparent as everyone would like to believe, even though what we initially what we begin to see is that as Batman is interacting more and more with Pamela Isley, he's starting to get those traditional side effects when someone interacts with Poison Ivy, and we find out that she does have her powers. They just touch her or kiss her, you do get those traditional side effects that comes along with her. And again, the plot twist at the end does come to a crescendo where Poison Ivy and Batman are going head to head, as Batman deducts that she was responsible. Ultimately, she knew what she was doing. She wanted to get rid of Spencer so she can take control of this drug. That's the drug right there. And I can't, this is driving me nuts. I can't remember the name of it. It deals with a plant. The name of it is synonymous with the plant. I just can't remember. But either way, they do see the final crescendo. Batman does find a way to come up with an antidote that counteracts the effects Ivy has on individuals, which helps him get the leg up on Ivy at the very end. And as we see, Ivy does kind of get put back to the asylum as Batman kind of wins out in the day. So all in all, this trade, again, was a very good trade. It was a very good read. What I like, the Blade story was by far the best. Robinson just did a masterful job of weaving the story. I can't remember the Cavalier, if he was a new character or he's an older one from like a Silver Age brought and kind of re-envisioned for the modern age. I don't know. But if he created this character, this is awesome. I mean, the Cavalier, first off, it's kind of a micro vision of Batman, kind of with the Zorro theme that obviously played a huge role in Bruce Wayne's past. But I just love how it's kind of, again, he kind of adopts the way kind of we've seen with Harvey Dent with we've got the tragic fall of a hero, because he was a hero. Maybe not up to the level of Batman, but he was definitely seen in a positive light between the police and the citizens of Gotham. But again, it was a tragic fall. The artness was great. Tim Sale just did a fantastic job in this. There was a page in particular just harking back to the Long Halloween, and it was just spectacular. And I love while the color palette does kind of have like a darker kind of taste to it, the reds really pop out, not only with the Cavalier's mask, but also when you see blood at the crime scene. Hopefully I come across a page that has Joker and Riddler and Hugo Strange. Tim Sale did a really good job on the art in this. Trying try to keep this video down to no more than 25 minutes. So if I don't see it here pretty soon, this camera, I hate you. Either way, yeah, Tim Sale just did a really good job in this. If I had to really kind of knock anything with this first story, I think the story with Batman and Mr. Lime really had nothing to do with the overall plot. It's just a way to keep Batman in the periphery while they kind of build up the Cavalier character, which was, and I think that's more just a minor gripe, but overall it was just a fantastic story. Really, no other flaws to other than that. It's just the thing where Mr. Lime, even his motivation about what he was doing, while might not have been as transparent as we initially thought with the motive, trying to get rid of the puppy. Oh, here's the page right here. Just freaking awesome. I love it. Still wouldn't hold back on how much of a good quality the story is. The second story with Batmite, just disappointing on so many levels. The art was goofy. I think the plot was kind of stupid and tired, and just I did not like the design for Overdog. It was just horrible. That might be the only good out of this story. I did like the way Batmite looked, but everything from the story to the art just took me on. It was just tired. That's the only thing I can say. It was just boring and tired, which again, disappointing because it's Alan Grant. The last story I really did enjoy. It did have kind of like a more classic feel with the art. And I think the story was really good. If I had to really kind of knock anything in the negative with this particular story, I think the way that the story wrapped up at the end, how Batman took out Poison Ivy, was cheap. It really was. He basically just takes her out with water, and I don't know. It was kind of a letdown, the ending, but all in all, especially with Blades and Hothouse, had all the elements of a good Batman story you want. Had good crime elements, good detective work, great action, really good art. While I give the art kind of more of an edge in the Blades, the Hothouse art was still pretty good. The color palette used by both, again, kind of brings back to those old classic Batman stories, kind of a darker one, and really did play to the nostalgia factor in it. All in all, just a fun trade. The problem is that I don't know if I can recommend it, because I give it a 3. I would probably give this a 3.5, maybe even a 4 if that Batmite story was at all good, but it was just so bad, which really brings it down to a 3. Could even go to 2.5, but the Blades was too good. I just couldn't give it a 2.5 average rating because the Blade was just too good. But the problem with this trade is it's out of print, and I checked eBay just before doing this video, just for curiosity how much it's going, and depending on the condition, this thing's going anywhere between 30 and like $70. And to be honest, that's a pretty hefty price tag to pay for basically 5 issues of good story and getting one really bad story with it. So I think you might be able to get the Blades, which is issues 32 to 34, and Hothouse, which is 42 to 43. Probably a little cheaper getting them in single issues. I'm sure they're in dollar bins or whatever. These are lesser known stories, but really good ones, so you might be able to get a deal on it versus spending all the money and paying for it. So all in all, great trade with one crummy story. Those 2 stories, though, you read it, it's definitely good. I just don't know if I can recommend it, simply how much it's going to cost you. But if you can somehow come across this at a decent price or get those issues like I mentioned in a single format, definitely, by all means, you will definitely love those 2 issues, those 2 stories. So anyway, let me know in the comments below what you thought of this story, if you read it, or what you thought about this video in the comments, and we'll just kind of bat chat about it and go from there. So until next video, which I'm probably going to do another one of those Batman classics. I'm having fun doing these. So until then, take care.